Instead of doing a review for the phone, we are doing the accessories first, and today we have the most crucial accessory for the ROG Phone series, and that is its cooler. For every generation of the ROG Phone, there is an accompanying cooler too. The ROG Phone 7 Ultimate is a bit special. The AeroActive Cooler 7 comes bundled in the box as well, alongside with a pouch so you can carry the cooler around in your backpack without it getting damaged. That aside, the cooler got beefed up quite a bit, so in today's video, we're gonna take a look at what's new, what's improved, and if this cooler is any good, and also if it is worth buying or not. We'll also be comparing it with the AeroActive Cooler 6 for the ROG Phone 6, so let's begin. Since we have the ROG Phone 7 Ultimate, the triangular box has both the AeroActive Cooler 7 and also the accompanying case in the box. This design language is very similar to what we had before, and I'm still gonna call it a bikini case because it's practically providing the same amount of protection as before. It's just around the sides and the majority of the back is exposed. Looking at the cooler itself, we'll see that the AeroActive Cooler 7 is a lot larger than its predecessor. It has a lot of positive benefits, and we'll get into that later, but that also means carrying the cooler around will be more annoying. The pouch works, but what if I just want to put the entire phone with the cooler attached to the phone into my pocket? Well, even for someone like me who exclusively wears cargo pants, it will feel a bit large. The overall design has changed a lot. The middle back piece with the fan and also the TEC, thermoelectric cooler, is a lot bigger and has larger cutouts for more airflow. Even the fan is different this time because we have more fan blades compared to its predecessor. What I do like is also the power button is now recessed so that I wouldn't accidentally press it as compared to the ROG Phone 6 with the AeroActive Cooler 6. And the release latch is also not that easy to press now, so I think those two are very good improvements. Both coolers also have 4 buttons that can be remapped in games, L1, L2, R1 and R2, and the shape of the buttons are also slightly different now, specifically the contour. I did say that the previous generation AeroActive Cooler 6 is not ergonomic enough to use the L2 and R2 buttons since it's just, you know, your fingers can't really reach those buttons properly. And now they made the L2 and R2 buttons easier to actuate and can actually be pressed directly downwards. And you can still bend it sideways to actuate the button if you want to, so it kind of depends on how you want to use it and how your hand is shaped. And here is where we'll talk about the comfort of using the phone with the cooler. Both the ROG Phone 6 and ROG Phone 7 series are identical in terms of its shape and size, so the only varying factor here is the cooler itself. Now, because the new AeroActive Cooler 7 is larger and subsequently wider form factor, it makes my grip on the phone a lot better. My ring fingers can actually rest on the L2 and R2 buttons without it feeling weird. And combined with the aforementioned improvements to these two buttons, it just makes it feel so much more better to use. Since the way I grip the phone has changed, I can actually use all 6 buttons, the triggers and also the 4 buttons on the cooler itself, without worrying the entire contraption dropping off my hand. While this new cooler has improved ergonomics, it still isn't the best, I would say. So if I am to play a game that requires me to utilize all of the 6 buttons on this device, then I will have to carefully hold it and press those buttons without, pressing all 6 buttons at once and then let go of my grip. I would have to say you still need some kind of grip because my pinky finger is still not doing anything, so something extending downwards of the phone, like somewhere around here, would be a lot better. Both the L1 and R1 buttons do feel better, but they pretty much remain the same otherwise, so I don't really have much to talk about it here. They still feel as fantastic as ever, so yeah, those 2 buttons are good. Now, as a cooler, is the AeroActive Cooler 7 actually good? Well, honestly, this is where I'll say the cooler functionality of this accessory is pretty much not necessary. In our gaming test, we already determined that the phone can cool down the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 so well to the point that it is below 40 degrees Celsius. And yes, that is with Genshin Impact at the highest graphical settings at 60 FPS with X mode enabled. Remember, ROG Phone 7 Ultimate has the Aero portal as well. That little flap just opens up to reveal a copper heatsink, and when you attach the AeroActive Cooler 7, then it blows air through the heatsink to dissipate even more heat from the chipset. But since the performance is identical, the Aero portal is also not a necessary feature. This is actually amazing, honestly. Frame rates were consistent at 60 FPS and there were no stutters at all. Remember, the phone can do it all even without the cooler. So I took things to the extreme. I used 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme Stress Test benchmark that runs the benchmark 20 times in a row to see if the phone ever heats up to the point that it thermal throttles. If it does, then there will be a huge discrepancy between the best and worst loops of the benchmark. And well, the result is actually very good. As we can see here, the phone can maintain the performance without thermal throttling at all. But that also confirms that the cooler part of this accessory is kinda unnecessary. I also ran the benchmark a few more times with different modes of cooling, just because you can select it in the Armoury crate, so you can select between Smart, Cool, Frosty or Frozen modes. And I want to know if we can extract even more performance out of the phone, and from what we can see here, we can't. The result for all benchmark tests remains within margin of error, and this double confirms that the cooling aspect of this accessory is again not necessary. Now that means if I have the AeroActive Cooler 6, then I can save some money and skip this new cooler, right? Well, technically yes, if we don't care about the improved ergonomics and we are just looking at the perspective of cooling performance alone, then yeah, it doesn't matter which cooler that you're using because the ROG Phone 7 also supports the AeroActive Cooler 6. So why should you get the AeroActive Cooler 7 then? Well, it actually has three specialties. The first one is the built-in subwoofer. Yes, the cooler has a subwoofer built in, and that is why there are two new pogo pins beside the USB Type-C port. It actually does make quite a huge difference too. Have a listen to this comparison here. Oh, the kickstand is also at a different angle compared to the AeroActive Cooler 6. So combined with the subwoofer and also its front-facing stereo speakers, the ROG Phone 7 becomes a fantastic portable video watching device. The second advantage of the AeroActive Cooler 7 is the return of the audio jack. Yeah, this audio jack was present on the AeroActive Coolers 3 and 5, but they removed it on the AeroActive Cooler 6, and now they brought it back. The third advantage, according to what ROG showed us, is the little air funnel that can redirect airflow from the fan behind to the screen in front. In my mind, I thought that this means the cooler will create a breeze to cool down our thumbs, but in reality, the air funnel doesn't do anything impactful, I would say. I can't feel any breeze, and even with our thermal camera here, I cannot see any sort of cool air blowing out from that funnel. So I wouldn't call this an advantage, but it's there. And overall, I do really like how the new AeroActive Cooler 7 is designed. It seems like ROG realized that the phone itself can already sustain the performance of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 without overheating, so they added more useful features like the subwoofer and also improving its ergonomics for all the buttons to be used while gaming. But if you want to use the new AeroActive Cooler 7 with the ROG Phone 6, can you do that? Actually, you can't. At least not yet. Even though the cooler fits 100% perfectly, the ROG Phone 6 just doesn't detect the cooler at all. Before you head down into the comments and say that the pogo pins might be the issue, I would answer you straight away, no. I thought the pogo pins might create a short circuit and disable the cooler entirely, So how I circumvent that issue is to actually put a piece of tape on the pogo pins and then attach it to the ROG Phone 7, and the cooler is still detected, it's just that the subwoofer is disabled. And when I did the same to the ROG Phone 6, it still doesn't detect the cooler. So that means there is a software locking the ROG Phone 6 from using this new cooler. It might be the same situation as the ROG Phone 5 with the AeroActive Cooler 6, whereby we have to wait for a new software update to add the compatibility, but I'm not sure if that's the case for this time because ROG themselves did not announce an AeroActive Cooler 7 for the ROG Phone 6. And one last thing to mention, the AeroActive Cooler 6 is only included with the ROG Phone 7 Ultimate. If you're buying the base version ROG Phone 7, then you have to purchase the cooler separately, and I do not have the price of just the cooler yet, and we'll update it in the description and also in the pinned comment down below. Do subscribe while you're on the way down there as well. And that's it. While the AeroActive Cooler 7 is rather unnecessary in terms of its cooling performance, it does offer some other forms of utility like extra buttons and also the subwoofer. So yeah, that's all we have to share with you about this cooler here. If you have any other additional questions, then do leave them down in the comment section below. The full review of the ROG Phone 7 will come at a later date because there are quite a lot of things to test it and I want to take my own sweet time. So yeah, we'll see you then.